video at 7:40 at night on a Tuesday. This is not typically when news is breaking in the semaglutide, tirzepatide world or obesity medicine, type 2 diabetes medicine world, but it is tonight. And unfortunately, I've got some news to bring to you. And so we're going to get into what that news is. It has to do with compounded medications. This time it has to do with compound semaglutide, which is sort of like a double gut punch when you consider what has been going on in the world of compound tirzepatide over the last month or so. This affects semaglutide, which the 1-2 punch could be absolutely devastating to accessibility. And so we're going to get into basically what is happening with Novo Nordisk in the last 24 hours. Again, this is just breaking, and we'll get to it. Before we jump into it, hit the like button, the bell button for notifications, and make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribing to this channel already. So that you get updates just like this. We've got it before anybody has it. And so all this information, as we always say, is so that you can make more competent and confident decisions with your doctor. So compound semaglutide, let's get into it. Well, essentially what happened here is the company that manufactures Ozempic and Wegovy, that would be Novo Nordisk. Hi, Sandra, how are you tonight? So the manufacturer of semaglutide, Novo Nordisk, petitioned the FDA yesterday. In this petition, and we'll have all the documents available at onthepen.com. The link will be in the description. As soon as I get off of this video here, I will finish up the article that I'm working on for the website. You can check it out there and make sure that you share it far and wide. Basically what happened was Novo Nordisk petitioned the US government, the FDA in this case, to have semaglutide added to the demonstrably difficult to compound list. Now, that is a mouthful, first of all, but what does it mean? Essentially, it means that if the FDA were to add this to this list, compound semaglutide would go away entirely. It would be unlawful to compound any version of semaglutide. Now, again, like I said, we've been following the compound tirzepatide saga, which is sort of embroiled in a legal battle right now relating to the FDA shortage list. This is entirely different. This is an entirely different approach by Novo Nordisk to petition the United States government to remove 503A, 503B pharmacies' ability to compound semaglutide. Now, essentially what they're alleging is that the compounded versions do not equate a replica, an exact copy of semaglutide. What they're saying is that in the way that semaglutide is manufactured, the API that is manufactured outside of Novo Nordisk, basically there are impurity concerns because basically the peptide is synthesized in the process of manufacturing the API, where within the sphere of Novo Nordisk, the peptide is actually the process is called a recombinant process, but essentially it's derived. The peptide is derived from a yeast, and that is specific to Novo Nordisk. The process of basically compounding the API in a way that's sort of against the way that Novo Nordisk does it. A synthesized version is leading to higher levels of impurities in the drugs. This is what Novo Nordisk is alleging. Although, most compound medications come with a certificate of analysis, which always is going to show, they wouldn't bring it to the market if it didn't, that the impurities are well within a tolerated range. But again, this is what Novo Nordisk is alleging here. And so impurity concerns, dosing errors, and potency issues. One of the major concerns lies in the inconsistent dosing. According to Novo Nordisk, reports have surfaced of compound semaglutide having either significantly higher or lower potency than was labeled, leading to either overdosing or underdosing. Both scenarios pose significant health risks, particularly in a population that relies on accurate dosing for managing conditions like diabetes and obesity. And then the unsafe delivery mechanism, basically saying, unlike the unapproved products that come in the patented pens, we covered the importance of the pens on the podcast today. If you missed that, go back, check it out. But basically, the filling of the pens, the injection syringes from the vial. They're alleging that that is leading to an exorbitant amount of overdosing. Obviously, we've seen reports in the media about basically people calling into the sorry, the name kind of escapes me. This is what happens when you when you catch me at 7:45 on a Tuesday night. But basically, poison control centers getting calls on these overdosing of these medications, which is just unfortunate. But this was sort of cited in all these documents from Novo Nordisk. Hey, there's 68 people in here, 5 likes. If you'd like to hit the thumbs up button, that really helps people get the information out there. And this is going to be information that's super important to get out in a timely manner. So essentially, this happened yesterday. So what comes next is the FDA weighs its decision on whether to restrict compounded semaglutide. Patients and providers alike should be prepared for the fallout of this. Like, you should be making plans. But before you get too worked up, I want to get into what the process looks like. But definitely be talking to your doctor. If it's been a while since you fought for a prior authorization for the branded versions of these medications, now might be a great time to look at that again. If you are not working with a telehealth that does that, it might be time to work with one that does. I work with Ro. You can check them out at ro.co/OTP. They are very adept at helping fight for those prior authorizations and will do the work. They know what to say. They know what needs to be submitted and how in order to achieve the highest success rate of those prior authorizations as possible. So work with a good telehealth company. Here's basically the process. So I'm going to fly over where we've been so far on this live stream, and then I'm going to bring it around to what happens next. So Novo Nordisk petitioned the FDA yesterday to have semaglutide added to their demonstrably difficult to compound list. Essentially, this would, if approved by the FDA, if this petition was approved by the FDA, it would make it illegal to compound semaglutide products. So this is the first move you've seen by Novo Nordisk in the United States to really go after compounds, and they're taking an entirely different route than Eli Lilly has taken with tirzepatide. So before we worry too much about what is going to happen from here, basically there's a 3-step process that happens when a product is submitted for review to go on the demonstrably difficult to compound list. There's a public docket and comment period, which more to come on that if we need to mobilize as a community to be a part of that. But Novo Nordisk's request to add semaglutide to the list would go through a public docket where stakeholders, including patients, providers, and compounding pharmacies, can submit comments. The comment period usually lasts 60 to 90 days, but the FDA could extend it if there's significant public interest, which there would be, right? So that process alone is a 60 to 90-day process. And it's highly likely that, given how much people rely on things like compounded semaglutide, that this would last even longer than that. And then there's an advisory committee review. The FDA may convene a pharmacy compounding advisory committee or other relevant advisory panels to evaluate the nomination. This step is crucial as these committees assess the safety, efficacy, and complexity of compounding semaglutide based upon available evidence and public health concerns. Scheduling these meetings can add several months to the process. So now we're at 3 months. We add a couple months to this. We're at 6 or 7 months. And finally, the FDA evaluation and rulemaking. Once the advisory committee has reviewed the data and public input, the FDA will begin its internal review and decision-making process. And this can take anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending on the urgency and complexity of the issue. So you tack on another 6 months to that. So we're looking at least a year, likely, before the FDA would rule on this. But this, again, we are sort of in uncharted territories here, right? I don't know that we can see like examples of this having happened in the past, because people have never relied on compounded medicines, at least one specific class of medicines, to this extent. And so that is a very fascinating sort of element to all this that makes it sort of difficult to predict what the timeline is. But according to the process that exists and the framework that exists to deal with these kind of things, there should be some period of time where we have to respond to this as a community, both making plans with our medical providers and making those plan B, plan C, and plan Ds. And this is what sort of makes it so challenging, is that you've got, in parallel with this, you've got the attack and the assault on compound tirzepatide, with the FDA removing tirzepatide from the master shortage list, and then the lawsuits that have ensued, and sort of the uncertainty around that. So that's the news. That's the breaking news tonight. Again, we will have an article up at onthepen.com. We will link the submittals that Novo Nordisk submitted to the FDA on this, so that you can take a look at those for yourself. There's 100 people in this live stream tonight. So if you could hit the thumbs up button, that would be extremely helpful for me. Thank you to those who have dropped comments in to the chat tonight, as we have had this breaking news here. Sue said, their argument is you can't make medicine safely. You've been making safely for 2 years. Yeah, it seems like a wild argument, right? It seems to be timely, right? It doesn't seem like it's really rooted in patient safety. If it was, this would have been brought a long time ago. However, you do see some presentations, we'll say, sublingual drops, chewable tablets, even I've seen patches of these medications in compound form. None of these are FDA tested and FDA approved. To Novo Nordisk's point, actually, since you brought that up, the oral formulations of semaglutide, which would be the branded version, would be called Rybelsus. They're saying that even in the compounded version, they don't include the SNAC technology, SNAC. It's an acronym for basically a technology that Novo Nordisk has developed to help the peptide be bioavailable when you swallow it. And so, the compounded versions of the swallowable tablets obviously don't have that patented technology from Novo Nordisk, so they don't have the same bioavailability. That would change the dosing regimen. It would change the titration process. It would change so much about the medication. So, it is the wild, wild west, and there is probably a good argument to be made for some of this nonsense to get reined in a little bit. We talked earlier today on the podcast about the chewable versions of tirzepatide that were being offered by Mango RX. They're being sued by Eli Lilly. So, I mean, we're just starting to see, the big pharma assault on these compounds. And to be honest with you, some of these compounding outfits have put a bullseye on their back just by offering things that aren't FDA approved and that are objectively concerning, and marketed in a way that is extremely disingenuous, I think. And so, they're not doing themselves any favors, in my opinion. Of course, this week we'll have Mr. Scott Bruner, the CEO of the Alliance of Pharmacy Compounding, on. This will be, I'm sure, a topic of conversation that will be broached in that. We'll talk more about the tirzepatide shortage as well. But wanted to bring you this breaking news tonight. If there's 97 people in this chat, could you just give this a thumbs up before you go? I'd like to get to 100 thumbs up before we go. I really appreciate everyone joining tonight. Hit the subscribe button if this kind of content is the kind of content that you enjoy getting. We would appreciate that greatly. Hit the bell notification so you get notifications when we go live. And of course, check out onthepen.com for an updated article that will be available here within the next hour or so, including the documents that Novo Nordisk has dropped in this petition to the FDA to have semaglutide added to the demonstrably difficult to compound list. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being the best part of what we do at On The Pen. Really appreciate you joining me here tonight and every night. Stay tuned to On The Pen this coming Thursday. Our live show happens every Thursday night. We dropped a podcast today. If you wouldn't mind, go over and give the podcast a 5-star rating and review. Really, really appreciate it. Until next time, thanks for being here. Thanks for